It's not a complex concept, but at the same time, it's powerful. So that's the beauty of it.
Blockchain is everywhere. We first heard of it 13 years ago when Bitcoin cryptocurrency began to rise. But today, there are multiple uses attached to this technology. That's why we hear about it so much.
Combining data, combining artificial intelligence together with blockchain makes a huge ecosystem which has a lot of potential in itself, not only in terms of digital transformation, but also creating data as products, digital assets, digital platforms which can be later on shared with the rest of the industries as well.
At Globant, we help companies around the world reinvent themselves and find their way forward through digital and cognitive transformation. We help them create a way forward. Welcome to Unscripted Tech, a Globant original podcast about the trends that are changing how the technology game is played and about what we do with them. My name is Rebecca Reed, and I'm a digital marketing strategist at Globant. Over the next 6 episodes, we'll be talking about technology trends that are changing the game for companies across all industries. Each episode will feature conversations with Globers from around the world, disruptors, trailblazers, and igniters that will channel innovation and creativity to provide a better understanding of what comes next with each of these tech trends. Let's dive in. On today's episode, we're discussing blockchain, a sort of digital ledger with a huge amount of records. What is blockchain exactly? And what is the market doing with this technology that everybody's talking about?
What I would highlight on blockchain, before going into technical details, it's a ledger, no? It's a way to record transactions in a way that is decentralized. So basically that decentralization and having a ledger that can be shared among different organizations and different parties is what makes blockchain real and what makes a difference.
Alvaro Gorepe is a technical director at Globant. Born and raised in Uruguay, he now lives in Seattle and has been working at the company for 7 years. He states that blockchain is his passion. But wait, let's take a step back. Before we dive in, we really need to understand blockchain in a nutshell.
So it is basically a software-based system which provides an area of trust for different stakeholders that can contribute together. And they rely on each other through a shared mechanism.
Abhijit Dutta is also a technical director at Globant, and he leads the studio from India. He is surely equipped with the knowledge to teach us Blockchain 101. He emphasizes trust. We can use blockchain tech to validate transactions when we don't have a third entity like a bank or a stock exchange. According to him, there are 3 pillars that hold the autonomy of this system together.
There are different ways of achieving consensus, but there are 3 key aspects, according to me, which makes blockchain technology stand out different. One is transparency. Second is immutability. The transactions cannot be rolled back. And the third one is non-repudiation, which means if someone is committing to give some money to someone else, that guarantee cannot be non-repudiated. So these 3 key areas, I believe, are the most important for a blockchain technology.
Now we need to understand what makes it particularly secure. It is not cryptography, a method of protecting information and communications through code. It is hashing.
But then what makes it actually secure? It is nothing but the cryptography, which creates a proper mechanism where you can trust multiple parties within the ecosystem. So cryptography is not a new concept. It has been there for generations now. But then cryptography also came up with one unique way, which is called as hashing. And the unique thing about hashing is it can convert any variable length data into a fixed length output. So which means you can convert predominantly a small file, or you can convert a large chunk of data just using a fixed length output. And this is definitely very much powerful. The reason why it is powerful is mainly because, as I was mentioning previously, of the immutability aspect and the non-repudiation aspect.
They say hashing is like making a smoothie. It is super easy to put different fruits together into the mixer, push the button, and enjoy a nice beverage. But it is impossible to go back once we've mixed everything up. Abhijit explains it like this.
And other advantage which hashing provides is you cannot really, go back to decrypt the data. So, and that is where hashing as a principle differs from encryption. So in encryption, you can encrypt the data and then you can decrypt the data. But in hashing, what happens is there is always a forward transaction where you can just convert the data. It can be any data, variable length data, into a fixed length output. And other important factor is, the avalanche effect, which means if you change even a bit of the input data, it is going to have an avalanche in the output. And this specific property makes the technology, more robust and fault tolerant. Which means, let's say, if anyone is trying to tamper the data, as Oliver was mentioning, that would not be possible because it is going to change the output considerably. And then when you have multiple blocks, so each block stores not only the hash of its own, but also it stores the hash of the previous block. So which means if you have to, let's say if there is an attacker which attacks the system and changes the data, he will have to do it for all the succeeding blocks. So that is something which makes this technology pretty much powerful.
So now we kind of get it. We have an extremely safe technology that we can use to secure exchanges like cryptocurrency transactions. And it was Bitcoin that started the conversation.
Well, it's the first concept that we used in blockchain, and Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency in top of a blockchain. Ether, it's a cryptocurrency based on a blockchain that is Ethereum. They are basically digital currency. So they are represented as a token. It's one specific way, one specific use of blockchain technologies, and the most common one, but it is one of the specific use cases. And that transaction ledger that we talk about, when person A transfers something to person B, that can be a token, that can be a cryptocurrency, and that can represent value. And that are basically what cryptos are.
Nowadays, cryptocurrencies are not the only ones benefiting from this tech. There are both public and private blockchains, and this can lead to multiple uses.
Yeah, so in general, when we're talking about blockchain, we directly, the first initial thought is to go to the public ones, the Bitcoin, the Ethereum ones that are Bitcoin is one that finally introduced the concept. But those are a subset of the different solutions that we have in blockchain. In particular, we have three or four main types of blockchains. The public ones, they are the one that we just mentioned, like Ethereum, Bitcoin. And on those, basically anyone can be part of the network. No, so it's a public blockchain. Anyone can be part of that. Anyone can sign blocks. Anyone can be part of the mining process. So it's public for everyone. But there's another concept that is called a private one. You can create your own. Blockchain is only a technology. So at the same time, you can build your network in your organization. You can deploy a blockchain solution and create a permission-based blockchain where you can specify which is the one that it's being able to verify nodes, which one is what is the consensus mechanism that's behind it. So you can customize it the way you want it inside your own organization. So we have been seeing it in the finance sector for a while, and of course with cryptocurrencies in particular, but also the way that we think transactions across borders and even banking transactions. All of that has been disrupted by blockchain as a technology. But going to other industries like healthcare with the availability of there are still things to do with information off-chain and on-chain. But healthcare with health records in the blockchain, giving more control to the person, to the individual, on who is able to access their health records or how those health records get increase over time. that is an amazing field to explore, and there's has been many progress in that area in the last couple of years.
Sure, I agree with you on the fact that blockchain as a technology. I think it is not any specific industry which is not touched by blockchain or will be impacted by blockchain. And definitely, there would be different levels of adoption per se. And like you said, I think supply chain in general, whether it is supply chain finance or it is supply chain commerce, I mean, all of those things are going to be definitely taking a lot of advantage of this technology or distributed ledger technology in general. But according to me, financial sector is one area which is going to be getting the most benefit out of it, mainly because when we talk about any kind of intermediaries in between, whether those are banks or any other intermediaries, where transactions has to be made not only within the country but let's say outside of the country and intercontinental transactions. Similarly, other area which I could think of is insurance, where process. I mean, claiming the insurance is going to be much more easier using this technology, because you can find the authenticity of the person who's claiming it, and of course using the ledger they can validate if the transaction is valid or not. Healthcare is another area which is going to be greatly benefited, because different countries have different rules in terms of compliances. It will be interesting to see how permissioned or federated blockchain technology can be used to moderate the entire ecosystem for healthcare. And it can be personal healthcare, it can be public healthcare and whatnot, right? So yeah, this according to me would be the industries which will be greatly disrupted.
And on top of that, there's a lot of potential when you start combining technologies. So and that is the beauty of being in a company like Globant, where I was able to have conversation with different customers that wants to, and where we bring the value that it's basically combining things like IoT and blockchain. So IoT devices talking with the blockchain and doing automation based on results on smart contracts. So all of that brings take the technology to a different level, combining it with artificial intelligence, combining it with data and data process. So I think the possibilities are huge, and you only need to think exactly what is the business value of adding blockchain, and not only blockchain but a decentralized approach to a business problem or a business model. It's not only, hey, let's use the technology and that's it, next thing, but also how you think your business model around something that is decentralized now and allows you different ways of interacting with your customers or the customers between themselves.
You might have heard that blockchain is so secure that it cannot be hacked. Is this true?
Yeah, and about security and hacking, I would love to take a step back and talk about something else before that. That it's because I want to relate it. That is basically the concept of smart contracts, and we haven't got into that. And I think that goes also into the security space. I'm changing the script here and changing the flow that this conversation goes. But there's a reason behind it. Bear with me. So we haven't talked about smart contracts, and that is what we have been talking about blockchain for some time now, and blockchain as a technology for transactions and how that enables transaction between parties. What has make a difference in terms of how we can apply the technology is smart contracts. And smart contracts as a concept of code that lives in the blockchain and can be triggered based on transactions and produce outcomes, allow us to develop things in top of the blockchain in a decentralized fashion. And that makes a difference. And that is a concept that Ethereum introduced, but now there are most of the blockchain, or many of them, hasn't allowed this kind of solution on top of them. And also relates to the security, the aspect and the security aspect. And that is basically your blockchain can be 100% secure. So in 100% is a kind of tricky word, but Ethereum in particular, it's super stable, is I would say that it's almost impossible to hack because of the blocks technology, but also the volume of the amount of nodes that are part of the block of the blockchain. But that is not exactly true regarding what you developed in top of that blockchain. So you can have a vulnerable smart contract that your smart contract can be vulnerable. So that kind of relates to the how reliable or how secure it is, everything that is there.
So I think you beautifully combined the vulnerability with the smart contract thing, because see, ultimately it's a digital contract, right? And whenever we are saying something which is a contract, which means it has some legal implications to it. Putting legality into the ecosystem, the main thing is how do you ensure that something which is non-tangible is reliable, right? So as you're mentioning, right? So virtually it is impossible to hack because of the complexity of finding out a new node or block in the and getting that added to the blockchain itself. But then there are few areas where this technology can be hacked. Other problem which comes up is double spend, which means, let's say if someone is making a transaction for buying a bicycle, but then the transaction would not be valid because that block where the transaction was being made was not correct. And that is when this kind of attacks could be making the entire system vulnerable. But then there have been enough and more theories where this attacks can be counterfeited.
Yeah, on the 51% attack that you mentioned, like let's consider it's basically that, not if you own more than half of the miners, for example, in Bitcoin, you are able to control the blockchain. It's doable, yes, in theory. In practice, it's not achievable because owning more than half of the miners in Bitcoin is physically impossible at this point of time with the volume of miners, the volume of nodes in the network. It's basically that the nodes that you need to own. So in practice, it's not achievable. So that goes a little bit more when you're creating a new blockchain and you're putting it out there, putting it in public. There's a period where there's a vulnerability window, you can say, where you need to be careful, basically, because the volume of amount of nodes, amount of machines that are behind that blockchain is not high enough that can be vulnerable to a 51% attack. So those are the main ones. And what coming back to the smart contract piece. So there are two. So there are two ways of making vulnerable blockchain. Not blockchain as a blockchain itself, but there are two vulnerability points, and one of them it's the smart contracts, because basically if you are putting code and you put in a piece of software on top of the blockchain, that code can have a vulnerability that can be used to attack it.
So we've learned about the benefits of using blockchain, but as with every big technology, there are some concerns and drawbacks about it. Its anonymity can be a problem. Also, the huge CO2 footprint it leaves. To generate these blocks, we need a stunning amount of computing power.
And now, with this entire decentralization system, the major challenge is consensus, right? I mean, how do you trust blocks, right, which are anonymous, and at the same time, you are okay to make that transaction with an assumption that it is going to be legitimate. And one of the criticism which most of the people have, especially from the blockchain technology, is the anonymity. I'm talking predominantly on the public blockchain side, as Alvaro was mentioning. And there is the criticism is also in the fact that these anonymity or transparency issues can also lead to some of the criminal activities where people can make transactions for non-legitimate purposes, whether it is drugs or anything else. There have been some studies which have found out that criminals are also trying to be going out of the public blockchain because of the fear of being known in the public, right? And maybe predominantly because they don't understand the technology pretty well. But having said that, I think coming back to the consensus part, in a distributed or decentralized ecosystem, consensus is more important. And there are multiple ways of doing it. For example, Bitcoin uses proof of work. Ethereum used to use proof of work. Now it is moved to proof of stake, similar to Cardano, which is one of the largest distributed open source technology on proof of stake. And then, as Alora was mentioning, the third one is kind of debatable, which is more on the proof of authority, where you set a group of moderators in the ecosystem which will validate and make sure that the new blocks are added based on their moderation.
Yeah, you were mentioning consensus protocols, and that is where it makes the difference. So we were discussing this the other day, that it's most of the blockchains, or Bitcoin in particular, and the early stages of blockchain has been starting with proof of work, that it's a computing intensive computing intensive process, and that consumes energy. And by consuming energy, we are creating a footprint of CO2 that is high. So that is part of the drawbacks on some of those proof of work based blockchains, and that is why we have been seeing more and more blockchains move to a different concept of consensus protocol, like proof of stake. Ethereum is in the process of Ethereum 2.0, that is proof of stake. Cardano, you mentioned, EOS.io. So there's a bunch that are going that direction, that it's a protocol that is not based on computing power, it's based on stake, on how many pieces or how many tokens you own is what makes you able to certify and move blocks. So that is a step in the right direction in terms of sustainability and reducing that carbon footprint. Yeah, so that is key. So that is changing a little bit the ecosystem in general. Bitcoin will not change, because Bitcoin is by default is the way it works and it cannot be changed. But others are starting to evolve in that direction.
As both of you said, blockchain can come in handy in multiple scenarios, even though today it is used mainly in the cryptocurrency world. But what do you guys think future uses are?
The future forecast, according to me, is from a cryptocurrency perspective, it could potentially replace the fiat currencies and stable coins. It could come up with a single currency across the globe, which can be agreed by multiple countries for transactions. And acceptance would become a huge thing. But again, there's no single answer to that. There has to be a consortium of multiple banks, multiple governments working together in order to make it happen. Because I believe everyone has started understanding the potential which it carries, let alone the bottlenecks, or I would say the security aspects, which is definitely greater than the other software-based security ecosystem which we currently have. So I believe this technology is going to be there for the future. Combining data, combining artificial intelligence together with blockchain makes a huge ecosystem which has a lot of potential in itself, not only in terms of digital transformation, but also creating data as products, digital assets, digital platforms, which can be later on shared with the rest of the industries as well.
I agree of everything that you said. I think that the decentralized technologies are here to stay and will keep evolving and will keep gaining more terrain and traction. On the financial sector, you mentioned the cryptocurrency being more and more accepted and supported by countries. I think then I still believe that there's a next step in securities and tokenized securities. I think that that market is something to explore, and that will keep evolving. I believe that the Nasdaqs of the future are the ones that are going to change in this space. But besides that, yeah. So the other aspect that I think that the future will look like and where we're heading is in a greener blockchain technology. So all this movement into proof of stake and different consensus mechanism that moves us away to heavily computational process to certify blocks. It's what's going to make this technology greener, and by greener, more adaptable, more people will adopt it. And that will start to gradually move solutions into it. So right now, the transaction fees, carbon footprint are still high. The price is volatile, so it's hard to predict how much you're going to spend in your new decentralized solution. That will stabilize, and when that is stable, the next step is going to be much easier to take. So I think those are the main areas of future. No, it's making the ecosystem more stable, more adopted by more countries, more regulations, and not only in the cryptocurrency space, but also in certificates, or be able to certificate your transactions with a signature in the blockchain. That is coming in different countries. That it's already in place. Notary process are being certified in blockchains already. And all of that is going to keep evolving. And by doing this with a blockchain that's greener, I think we are getting in the right direction, and what it's going to be the future here. And I hope that it's going to be a technology that can transform some of our interactions. So it's a mix of where I think we're going and I hope. So let's see how it goes. Exciting times.
Wow, we've learned a lot about blockchain, what it is, how hashing works, how it's being used today, how secure it is, and also the challenges it presents for the ecosystem. It seems blockchain is shaping our future in a way that, once we take the step forward, there's no coming back. While its decentralization and security make it an attractive system for other industries beyond cryptocurrencies, the seed of the blockchain seems to be sprouting its first shoots. The best seems to be yet to come. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more insights on Unscripted Tech, a Globant original podcast where we reflect on developments that will shape our future. To learn more about how we seek reinvention, go to globant.com and follow our show on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.